Hello, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce today Larisa Ficulle Santini, who is an Esprit postdoctoral fellow at the Austrian Academy of Sciences in Vienna, and these days a visiting researcher in Uppsala University. She holds her PhD from St. Andrews and La Sapienza, defended in 2023, with a thesis on early Byzantine historiography focused on Agatias. And you can read from her work in Byzantine and modern Greek studies, Zeitschrift Papyrologie und Epigraphik, or Maya. Today, however, we get to hear from her EWF Esprit project in Vienna, Fertility Control in Byzantium. Larisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dan. Thank you, everyone of the TeTra seminar for inviting me, for having me here. And I guess I can share my screen now. Let's see. Okay. Can you see it? And can you see my PowerPoint as well? Yes. Okay, I guess I'll just try and reduce you as an icon. And you cannot see yourselves, right? No. This is just something.
Not in your screen, yes.
Okay, great, amazing. Okay, perfect. So let's get this started. And obviously, if there's some problem with the PowerPoint as I talk, just feel free to point it out. Okay, so today I'm going to introduce you, to give you some overview about my current project on fertility control in Byzantium. Started in 2025, so just last year, and for some reason I cannot. Okay, yes, now I can. Perfect. So I will not spend too much time on the project per se, because we have other things to look into today. But here I decided just to show you very, very briefly some of the main research questions that I would like to at least tackle over the next years. But we will not take a look at that. We will actually take a look, as the title says, at the words to say it. Now, this is a title that I steal from a very nice romance, a very nice novel from Marie Cardinal's 1975 book, Les mots pour les dire. And the idea is really to look at the words that would express contraception and abortion in Byzantine Greek sources, because I deal solely for now with Greek sources. Now, why words and why words are important? They are important, first of all, because when I needed to start this project, I needed to understand where to look and which sources I had at my disposal. As you know, fertility control in Byzantium and abortion in Byzantium are not widely studied topics. So I could obviously gather already known sources from the few articles that are at our disposal. But I mostly needed actually to find new sources, mostly through the Thesaurus Linguae Graecae, the tool that all Hellenists cannot do without. So I realized very early that I was using the TLG, I was using the Thesaurus, both to identify new sources and to trace vocabulary. So I would obviously use keywords to find new sources that would become then the center or part of this research. But at the same time, vocabulary itself was becoming an object of study and was revealing how fertility control was conceptualized, mostly when it comes to abortion, which is the main area of research I'm focusing into now. Just to give you an idea of the key guiding questions that are moving me through this words lexical investigations, I'm asking myself, how were fertility control practices conceptualized and discussed? Does terminology vary by genre? So is there a difference in the way medical sources, legal sources, liturgical sources would talk about abortion? Is there a difference also in words? So would they use different words? And can we trace diachronic evolutions of the terms, both from classical to Byzantine Greek and within the Byzantine millennium? So are we able to trace some kind of diachronic evolutions in terminology? Now, I had the feeling that it was even more necessary as a study because we know as historians, linguists, philologists, that words matter, obviously. I had the feeling that words matter even more in this case because we are in a very ambiguous framework and field, let's say. This was a feeling that I had already when I was preparing the application and I was thinking in broad terms about this project. When I was reading, for example, books that had been instrumental for me for thinking about the project and the sources, which are mainly these two books, Abortion in the Early Middle Ages from Zubin Mistry and Abortion in Early Modern Italy from John Christopoulos. So even though those two authors deal with one Latin sources, the other one Italian, early Italian sources, I could find that they were kind of having the same problems and the same issues that I was also kind of thinking about. So the ambiguity of words when it comes to abortion, the ambiguity of the terms used, and the ambiguity in understanding exactly what the author is talking about. Why is that? Mostly it is because in many cases we don't have a stable, fixed distinction between abortion and miscarriage, which is, for example, in English a very clear distinction. It is not in Italian, for example. We would use the same word, aborto. And this is something that I could also find in the sources I was dealing with. So no stable distinction between abortion and miscarriage, but also, although rarer, no distinction sometimes with expressions like premature birth, for example, homotokia, and sometimes with contraception itself. So you wouldn't be able to say what the author was referring to. Another problem, and it is something we're going to see even if from another angle and perspective soon, there was the possible overlap and ambiguity between amenorrhea, so lack of menstruations or irregular menstruations, and pregnancy. And at the same time, you would have the identical remedies, I'm talking about medical sources mostly, you would find identical remedies used to induce menstruations, they are called emmenagogues, and to induce abortion, so what we call abortifacients. So, for example, in some recipes, here I'm talking mostly about recipe books, the so-called Xenonica, or in some case Iatrosophia from the late Byzantine period. We will not take a look at this today, but in those recipes, sometimes you would find pessary or remedy to bring down both the menses and the embryo. So you would really find the sources themselves identifying the same remedy as bringing down menstruation, so emmenagogue and abortifacient. So the kind of situation I was dealing with was a situation where the vocabulary did not map and does not map neatly onto distinct practices. So even more important to really start from the words and take a look and try and take a look at precisely what the word meant. Now, when it comes to this ambiguity situation, it is obviously not surprising in a context such as that of fertility control, because words matter, as I just said, but they matter even more so in a context and within a practice that was perceived and is still perceived sometimes as either illegal or, in any case, morally controversial. In this regard, I hope that you don't mind if, before taking a look precisely at a few texts, I hope that you don't mind if I quickly show you something from a different perspective. I move away from the ancient world just for 2 or 3 minutes to show you how this whole ambiguity situation seemed to be true at almost every point of the long history of abortion. So here you can see just a few advertisements, abortion providers' advertisements from Central and South America from the last century, so the 20th century. And I would just like you to remark something that we will see in a few sources just in a moment, that apart from these, I hope you see the red circle, but apart from this advertisement here, where you really have the word pregnant, embarazada in Spanish, all the other cases that you could see here highlighted in pink, they all talk about either menstrual irregularity, menstrual delay, or needing to clean, so cleansing, cleaning. This obviously in a context where abortion is illegal, so the need to talk around the concept with other words. This was true also in a different context, the context of North America, where the famous abortifacient Madame Restel, abortion provider Madame Restel, in the 19th century, she was advertising her, again, illegal services with the same words. So instead of talking on abortion provider, she would talk of irregularity, suppression of menstruations, and she would talk about the need to restore menstruations instead of having an abortion, so interrupting the pregnancy. Very briefly, even though from a different perspective, words matter greatly also when it comes to the anti-abortion advertisements, where obviously instead of talking about embryo or fetus, you would find very specific and more morally charged words as youth, human being, baby. Now, this was a detour from what we're going to see now, but it was a detour to make you understand that the kind of problems I'm dealing with ancient and Byzantine sources make me and sometimes prompts me to think a lot about the current situation, because sometimes I really find the same problems, and we will find it in a moment. We will see it in a moment. So when we come back to Byzantine sources, the current situation is the one you see on screen, even though I think it might change over the years, but not drastically, I would say. So when it comes to abortion language and the way they would talk about abortion, we mainly have 3 roots and words deriving from 3 roots: ἀμβλό, TeTra, and phter or the phtor. So you could see, for example, ἀμβλίσκω, ἀμβλόω, ἀμβλούσκω, ἀμβλόσκω, and then obviously the correspondent nouns, ἀμβλισμός, άμβλωσης, άμβλωμα, άμβλοθρίδιον. Then again, ἐκτιτρώσκω, έκτρωμα, τροσμός, εκτροσμός. The more, let's say, vague term phtyro, which means to destroy, like in the broad sense, but it is very much found in Byzantine sources with the specific meaning of abortion. So you would have phtyro, apophtyro, and then phtorion, phtorios, and apophtora for the noun. And then you would find phrases or idioms or periphrases, whatever we want to call them. The ones that you see in gray are more, let's say, they stress more the movement because they are embryon ἐκβάλλειν, and so ἐκβόλιον, embryon αποβάλλειν, and then αποβολή, embryon αποτίτεστε, and then the one you see in yellow, they are more morally charged, I would say. So, for example, απορρίπτειν το εν τη γάστρι embryon, so to to extract, to draw away the embryo from the womb. Μήκετη παιδοποίησε, which could also be, which might also refer to contraception. Then you would have very overt references to death. So Thanatun to brephos and tikilia. I think that it is also interesting to notice here, just as the anti-abortion advertisements, I was showing you the using of brephos, so infant, baby, instead of just embryon. And then you would find embryoctona diliteria or embryoctona pharmaca. Now, I guess that it would be interesting for us to see that this kind of discussion on the words to say it, the words to talk about abortion, was already present in antiquity. I will just quickly show you, without commenting too much, this passage from Horapollo. We could come back on it maybe on the Q&A if someone is interested in Horapollo, just because I would like to try and spend some more time on what follows, and specifically this passage from Eustachius of Thessalonica, with whom it is possible that the audience here is more accustomed than we are more accustomed in general, but very happy to come back on the Horapollo passage later. So, in a passage from the commentary on the Iliad, one of the two big Homeric commentaries of Eustachius, we find a very interesting and, to me, really unexpected passage where Eustachius at some point is talking about Eurystheus, so the Homeric hero, the Homeric character, and he would say, it should be known that this Homeric child, though born prematurely, has been brought to full term, most notably just like Heracles before him, even if Hera delayed his birth. And then it starts. But what is later called ἀμβλώμα and ἔκτρωμα are not the same thing. Of this, the original verbs are ἀμβλώσαι, and ἐκτρώσαι or ἐκτρώσαι, about which the ancients say the following. ἀμβλώσαι means to destroy a fetus in the womb, and ἀμβλοθρίδιον refers to such a thing. Ἐκτρώσαι and ἔκτρωμα, on the other hand, mean to destroy what has not yet taken form. So, when I found this passage, I was happily and positively surprised, because I would never expect Eustachius to engage into a grammatical linguistic conversation or discussion about ἀμβλώμα and ἔκτρωμα. What I find is very, very interesting is that, the first thing is that he starts this discussion, this reflection, from the fact that Eurystheus was born prematurely, so a very different concept for us as modern. So this ilitominos. But what I find even more interesting is that he talks about a later way of talking about these terms. So he would say that later, ἀμβλώμα and ἔκτρωμα were considered the same thing, but originally, so from maybe Attics, it was not the same. It was not the same concept. So, ἀμβλώσαι would mean to destroy a fetus in the womb, so abortion, whereas ἐκτρώσαι and ἔκτρωμα, on the other hand, would mean to destroy. This is something I decided to insert in the translation, but I'm not even sure, so I'm very happy to discuss that. Ἐκτρώσαι and ἔκτρωμα, on the other hand, would refer to what has not yet taken form. So it is clear that the difference is in the development of the embryo. What I'm wondering is also if there's a difference between abortion in the first case and miscarriage in the second case. I have been investigating, of course, because it is needed to do the usage of the words in the classical period, very lato sensu, and it seems that in any case, ἀμβλόω was the word to talk about abortion, and ἐκτιτρώσκω was the verb, so ἐκτιτρώσκω would be the verb to use in case of miscarriage. And I think that is very interesting to take a look at a distant passage, this one from Phrynichus, the Atticizing writer, not the tradition, who in his on Attic words, so this list of words to use and not to use in order to sound more Attic, which was obviously a big thing in the 2nd century CE, he would say, for example, ἐκτιτρώσκω, avoid it, rather say ἐξαμβλίσκω and ἀμβλίσκην. Do not say that the woman ἐξετρώσκεν, but rather say ἐξαμβλίσκω. Έκτρωμα, do not say it either, rather say ἐξαμβλώμα and ἀμβλοθρίδιον. So it seems that the distinction that Eustachius is talking about is the same one that Phrynichus is alluding to. So we had a very clear differentiation between the two concepts. Now, what I could find at this stage of the investigation, things might very, very well change, is that this is not the case in Byzantium, and Eustachius, it is a testimony of that, if I'm reading it correctly. So now here in these 2 slides, I'm just presenting you very briefly and visually to some of the many lexical works and lexica that I found that I'm looking at when it comes to abortion words. I'm not even started to take a look at the contraception words, but these are just some of the lexica I'm looking to, and you could see, for example, that already in Ezekiel's lexicon we would have a kind of synonymity situation that it's not the same that Phrynichus was talking to, and it's not the same of the one that Eustachius was explaining. So, for example, you would have in Ezekiel's ἀμβλοθρίδιον means άμβλωμα, brephos as well, ἔκτρωμα. Or, for example, ἀμβλόω and ἐξαμβλόω in Photius' lexicon means to phtire brephos, so to abort a fetus. And ἀμβλοθρίδιον, the abortifacient drug, and also what has been aborted. So here I would say possibly Photius is making more distinctions, but he's using, as if it was the normal Byzantine way of talking about the practice, the word phtire, so phteiro. Then we would have, for example, the etymologicum Gudianum, where we have ectroma, that which exits the womb in an undeveloped state, ἀμβλοθρίδιον. So we would think that ectroma refers to miscarriage, but then we have ἀμβλοθρίδιον, which normally refers to abortion. And then we could just keep on going, and this is just a selection because it's actually many more. Now, from this lexical and lexicography perspective, in the few minutes I have left, it will not take more than 5. I would just like to show you in practice how this works, because obviously this is a part. It's very important to take a lexica to understand the way the Byzantines would explain and the glosse that they would write to words that were perceived as far away from the current usage. But I think it's also very interesting to take a look at some sources, or some of the sources at least I'm dealing with, not only for the words themselves, but also to show you the sources I am using and to present you a very short selection of that. So, for example, we have the 6th century very important physician Aetius of Amida, who wrote an entire book devoted to gynecology. It's book 16th of the TeTra Biblos. For example, you could see here, and also in order to make you see the way I am proceeding when it comes to words, you would see here, for example, a chapter which is entitled On Those for Whom Conception is Unadvisable, and if it is needed to use abortifacients in such cases. And it is clearly a chapter that deals with abortion and not with miscarriage. It is very clear from the context, because what he's doing in this chapter is to talk and explain ways to have an abortion in case women are not suitable to conception. At the same time, if you would look at some other chapters titles from this book, the 16th, you would find again phtoria from Aspasia, which is clearly abortifacients, and then again, what are the symptoms of an impending abortion, which it is again a reference to abortion and not miscarriage. It is once again clear from the contents of the chapter. You have to rely on me because I didn't want to put the entire chapter here. Same the following title, how one must assist expulsion of an aborted embryo, Theapovolitu phtiromenu embryo. But then you would have the chapter 21, which clearly deals with miscarriage. Again, it is something that you would see from the context, on those who miscarry in the 2nd or 3rd month. But the word is always the same, phtéro, the verb is always the same. So it seems that the clear distinction that was used in the classical period, or at least in the Attic Greek, wasn't anymore a thing in Byzantium. I will just pass over Polovegina, not because it's not interesting, but just because I would like to close with something different. Because if we saw in Aetius how ambiguous the situation can be also within a single word, phtéro, phtoria, the situation is very much less ambiguous in other cases. So, for example, you would have a passage from John Chrysostom, specifically from his homily 3 on Genesis, where he would talk about, he's talking about widows, and he would say, engaging in unlawful acts and conceiving in her womb, she keeps it hidden, devising countless stratagems for herself in order to abort the child from her womb, whether by means of a poison or through other lawless women. Now, the word he uses is to ἐκτρώσκω, but just in order to be even clearer, just not to be obviously disambiguate, he would say to ἐκτρώσκω to brephos en ectis kilias aftis, so abort the child from her womb. So we see a much more morally charged way of framing the practice. And I'm kind of finding the same way of talking about abortion, so using very specific words in order to be sure not to have ambiguity in all the legal sources I'm dealing with. So, for example, already in Justinian's Novelle, you would find that she aborts on purpose, where the verb used is ἀμβλόω, but here with the adverb ἐξεπίτηδες, so on purpose, in order to be sure of what we are talking about. Same thing in one of the eclogae of the Isaurian dynasty, in this case the eclogae from the ecloga issued by Leo III. And in ecloga 17 you would have, if a woman fornicates and gets pregnant and plots against her own womb in order to have an abortion. So not only to ἐκτρώσκω, but the idea of plotting against her own womb. And the same thing, it would happen also in a very much more mysterious legal text, which is the Prochiron Legum or Prochiron Calabriae, which is in any case builds on the Macedonian legislation. Probably the Prochiron Calabriae just alludes to the origin of the manuscript, the southern Italian origin of the manuscript. And here we would find again ἐκτρώσκωσα ἐξεπίτηδες, so deliberately aborts, again to disambiguate, to be sure that we're not talking about miscarriage, so a voluntary abortion, and a morally charged expression as is such as aporipti ton and tigastri embryon. So the idea of casting out the fetus in her womb. And then we have a more ambiguous reference in the second part of the law, because we have likewise the one who causes a woman to abort or miscarry. So just to show you how even in the same text, it is important to think thoroughly about the words used, because you might have two very different words, ἐκτιτρώσκω and ἀμβλόω, used possibly in a different way or in the same way. I had another text, a very interesting one, but we can just leave it for the discussion. And just some very work in progress conclusions, much more questions than definite answers. So I'm really happy to discuss them. What I think I found up to now is that the classical distinctions that we see, for example, in Phrynicus already possibly collapsing, seem to have collapsed in Byzantium. When? I cannot say. But the Byzantine lexica mostly presents different terms, so the different roots, as synonyms, sometimes even putting in things that we wouldn't expect in the realms. For example, brephos. So we wouldn't think of brephos as aborted fetus. We would think only about fetus. So seems that there is still work to do. In some cases, especially medical sources, as we briefly saw in Aetius of Amida, it is only the context that disambiguates and differentiates abortion from miscarriage. In other cases, and this is something you again have to rely on me, because we had to pass over Paul of Aegina. In many cases, you would have emmenagogues and abortifacients that are different concepts, and this is for sure, but that can be overlapping, because sometimes you would have remedies that are indicated as working as both, so emmenagogues and abortifacients. At this stage of the research, one other conclusion I could reach is that no clear link has emerged between a specific word and a genre. So I was hoping perhaps to see ἀμβλόω or ἀμβλίσκω more in medical sources and ἐκτιτρώσκω more in legal sources. It doesn't seem to, at least at this stage of the research, but let's see. What I can say with some certainty is that legal sources and in general normative and prescriptive texts, liturgical texts included, are those where A, there is less ambiguity, because obviously being a prescriptive text, there is it needs not to be ambiguous, it needs to target precisely the category. And also, it is where we find the more morally charged terminology that we would not find, for example, in medical sources. I will just show you some very selected bibliography that it's helping me thinking this through. And I took a few minutes more, but I thank you for your attention. And I will just perhaps stop sharing now.
Thank you so much, Larisa, for this fascinating talk about Byzantine attitudes to fertility control, and for also illustrating the importance of words and their various meanings in different contexts. And for even giving us some modern parallels to think about and to consider. It's a great pleasure now to open the floor for questions. Please feel free to raise your virtual hand to address any questions, comments, other things you want to share to Larisa, or to write in the chat. If you are unable to speak yourself, we can also read out questions for you. Andy, please start us off.
I hope this works. Yes, fantastic. Thank you very much. It's a fascinating topic. It's so many questions. Maybe to start, well, two very different questions. One is, you mentioned liturgical texts, but you didn't really, I don't know if that was, did you mean Chrysostom's commentary or other texts? So do you want to talk a bit about this? And then my second question is the issue of male versus female voices. I mean, obviously there's the general problem of assume not that many female voices in general in Byzantium, but are there any, and do they talk about this? Thanks.
Thank you, Andy. You're really making me tackle things that I didn't manage to. Thank you very much. So liturgical texts. No, I didn't mean necessarily Chrysostom. I meant another text that I will show you in a moment, a text that Cosimo here knows very well because he had to hear about it for a long time. So can I share again the screen? Okay, so this is the text I was talking about. So in some ecologia, not exclusively though, but for example, in the great ecologion, the Ottobonensi Grecus 344, we would find a few texts, a text specifically that is called the Ακολουθία attributed to John the Faster. Now, the attribution to John the Faster, the 6th century patriarch of Constantinople, we know that it was something that they would do a lot because it was an auctoritas. What is interesting is that this Ακολουθία, which was already mentioned by Marie-Hélène Concordot in one of her articles on abortion in Byzantium, I could find it, and I'm working on it, but it's proving difficult, and I'm really happy to ask for help about this. I'm finding it in several other manuscripts with very, very minimal variations. So it means that it had a kind of important textual history. And I decided to label it liturgical because it is part of the liturgy, because it's the ακολουθία, so the order, and it would be part of the way the instructions given to priests on how to behave in confession. So you would have, and this is the text. However, with women, one must conduct a much more thorough and precise investigation, for they often resort to enchantments, sorcery, and other shameful acts, things so horrific that even to speak of them is dreadful, let alone to commit them. Women go so far as to commit various forms of murder, both during conception and even during full pregnancies. For some of them, each month, commit murder using a certain herb, and this seems to point to contraception, just as I, poor me, along with all the aforementioned sins, have received in confession. Thus, after thoroughly examining everything, one should inquire, how many children have they killed, especially those who live alone, by what means and how often. And then he goes, I use he, but I take it for granted, and then he goes in asking, for to drink a drug and thereby render oneself permanently barren is one sin, and the gravest of all. But something else is abortion, question, or contraception, I'm not sure, through ground herbs, which is lighter than the former. But to expel a fetus monthly with herbs is the most destructive form of murder, and it carries a penance of not taking part to communion until death, if the woman does not cease from it. Now, this text, which is extremely fascinating, often is often followed by a series of questions that the priest should ask. And within these questions, you have specific mentions of fertility control. So you should ask, did you drink a poison in order not to conceive? Did you kill an embryo in your womb? How many times did you do that? Etc., etc. So when I mention liturgical texts with a label that we can discuss about, before liturgical text, I was thinking about religious text. I have to admit that was Cosimo here that helped me thinking it through and labeling it liturgical. So if you don't agree with that, you can blame him. I'm kidding. But I think it works better because it's really, I mean, for now, the manuscripts I could find it into were mostly ecologia. So it makes sense to me. And so this is, sorry if I took a long time, but it also gave me the chance to show the text to everyone, because I think it's a real fascinating text. I never read something like this before. When it comes to female and male voices, again, thank you very much. It is something I would really like to have a good answer at some point. I still haven't. What I am trying to do, and it was something I'm doing for an article, will hopefully see the light next year. I'm trying to take a look at the gendered element in these sources, and I'm trying to do it, for example, in issues and in other medical sources, mostly from early Byzantium. You would sometimes have, as you saw, things like abortifacients from Aspasia. So these female names are the names of the auctoritates from whom the physician took the recipe, for example. We have that. We have Metrodora's treatise, which is a huge question mark, because Metrodora's treatise is a medical treatise preserved in only one manuscript from the 10th, 11th century in Florence. We don't have a critical edition. I know that someone in Germany is working on it. It should come out soon, but we're not sure about anything when it comes to that text. I'm really looking forward for the edition, because I think it will tell us much more. Because if it really is a text written by a female physician, Metrodora, it would be obviously a one of a kind in early Byzantium, if it is from early Byzantium, because we have datation, like someone would date it to the 2nd century CE and someone would date it from the 10th century CE. So we have like a 8th century span that makes it slightly difficult for me to know how to use it. And then, to me, I mean, the few things I could find are, for example, in this like realia, if we want to call them like this, the things that gets closer to realia, or in any case to everyday practice, as the text I just showed you. So the kind of questions and things that women would receive in confession, but again, from the priest. So I have to admit that it's more like a looking for a phantom. And when I decided the title of this project, which is Women's Reproductive Agency in Byzantium, I think that probably were I to choose the title again now, I'm not sure I would use the same word, because even though I would really like and I am trying to look for female agency in reproduction through the sources, I'm not entirely sure that I can find it the way we think about agency in sources that are 99% authored by men. So this is what I can answer at this moment of the research. But thank you, Andy. Those are two important questions.
Thank you. Next question by Alyosha, please.
Hi, Larissa. Thank you so much for sharing this really, really interesting and exciting research. I was really struck. I was wondering, would it be possible to share the slide of John Chrysostom again? I was really struck. I think it was from Sharon Gerstel's book that you pulled this image of like a fresco, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. This one, I think it says.
No, sorry. Yeah.
It's the one who drinks, right, in abortifacient. Ibiusa vodanon.
Yeah.
Prostamipedapis. Yeah. So it was just basically just out of curiosity and where the project is going. I was very interested if there's more art historical sources or frescoes like this or epigraphic evidence as well, because this is not just it's an image accompanied by text, and you just passed over it so quickly. So maybe it's a big part of your project, but I just wanted to hear more from you about if there's other images like this or how they might complement the textual sources, exactly on the lines of what you were just saying now. How can you deal with this evidence? Is there more of it? And how does it work in the larger context?
Thank you, Alyosha. Thank you very much. I would like, so I'm sure that at least some of you can you see this image?
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you see the three female sinners with the snakes?
Maybe it would be helpful to can you zoom in? can you, if you're on PowerPoint, you should be
I
able to
think you can zoom in,
Yeah.
Alyosha.
Okay,
You can
okay.
zoom in on
Sorry,
your
sorry.
screen.
Yep, I can do that.
Okay, but you can see them in any case, the three of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the image that I showed there, it's one of the female sinners, that is the way we label them, female sinners frescoes in Byzantine churches. You would have them in Cyprus, you would have them in Turkey, you would have them in Greece, and elsewhere for sure. So basically, you would have those female sinners represented in different ways, and they are always accompanied by descriptions of their sin. So, for example, this one, I'm sorry that you cannot see precisely what is written, because I took this picture actually 3 years ago, and I still wasn't into the project as I am now. So I just found it fascinating, but I had no idea what it was. So I cut some part of the text, unfortunately. I would like to go back and do the pictures and make the pictures again. But for example, this one is the one who refused to breastfeed, ta nipia. You can see here. This is I porni, for example.
Sorry, are you still on the slide with John Chrysostom?
No, sorry.
Okay, I think if everyone else also sees just the John Chrysostom.
That's the problem. So let me do like this. I thought, yeah, because the problem is that I was just sharing. Let me just do this.
Oh, perfect. Wow. Okay, now I see the three women. I was confused before.
Can you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the image I was talking about. So the female sinners. So the image I am showing you in the slide, it's just part of the same kind of framework, the framework of the female sinners in Byzantine churches. You would find very often this type here. So, for example, the one who refuses to breastfeed, the first one on the left, you can see it, I think. So you can see here tani pia, and then in the middle you could see I porni. And the same type of content, sorry, it would be the one we have here. I am back on the PowerPoint. Are you as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so here, this one is the one who drank an abortifacient, which is a type of female sinner that we find less often, but we find it. And it can complement what I am doing, of course, but two problems. So the first one is that usually, for what I could gather until now, they come from the later period, so later Byzantium. And I really had to decide, at least for these 3 years, to stop on Middle Byzantium. Like, it's a bit artificial, I know, but I really cannot do with the 3 last centuries of Byzantium, the Eastern Roman Empire, because I mean, I feel I already have too much material right now, so I really wouldn't know how to do it. This is the first problem. And the second problem, I don't remember what I wanted to say. Yeah, it is that I'm not a art historian, but for example, Marina Mandrikova, with whom I am doing a panel at the Byzantine Congress this summer, she has been working on that, and she is working on that, not specifically on the depiction of aborterers in these female sinners things, but on female sinners in Byzantine churches more broadly. It is definitely fundamental to take a look at them, as much as it is, as you can see. I don't remember. Can you see I am moving the slides? Yes, I hope.
Yes, everything
We
was
are
perfect.
at the
Thank
amulet.
you.
Yeah, for example, the amulet here and that amulet here. So this one is a late antique one, possibly a uterine amulet, whereas this one is a Byzantine one. So we have a huge number of late antique and Byzantine uterine amulets, so amulets that were used to regulate fertility, both in a sense and in the other, so both as fertility provider and as abortifacient. That's the reason why I luckily have 2 archaeologists, Basema Marnet and Grace Stafford, in the project as collaborators. But I have to admit that I'm not sure considered already the amount of things I feel I am finding on a textual level, I am not sure that even with the help of someone else during these 3 years, I will be able to really tackle that. Because I don't have the skills yet, and even with the help of someone else, I'm not sure I would be really able to say something and to study them the way they would deserve, especially consider the fact that they have not been studied, or not much. So it is fundamental to take into account the whole pictures, also archaeology and material culture. Hopefully in the future. So for now, I'm mostly using them as a visual stimuli in my PowerPoint, so that people could see that there is much to do. I'm not sure that I am able to do it myself at this stage.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Maria, please.
Thank you. Thank you for this really interesting paper, Larisa. My question is about the moralizing language that you find in some of these texts. Do you see them? Is that something that you see from the earliest of texts, or do you see a point where this develops, or do you see any trends in the sources you've considered so far, to how the act of aborting and the people aborting are considered, especially when does the moralizing aspect kind of kick in, if there's at all a point for that?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for this question. It seems to me, for what I could see, that it is as early as the church fathers. Even though, like, I wouldn't say that all the church fathers talk about abortion in the same way. So, for example, I'm thinking about Tertullian. There's also a very nice book by someone who's called Barr on Tertullian. So, Tertullian, for example, he would talk about abortion in morally connotated terms as a homicide, a murder, but at the same time would say that it is a necessary, he say, I think, necessaria crudelitas, so a necessary evil when the woman's life is in danger, so when the mother's life is in danger. This kind of moralizing language, it's still there. It's already there, though, in the church fathers. So it's not that I saw a specific moment where it seems to peak. It is very interesting to me, as someone who was hoping to find, maybe from a kind of philological, categorical way of thinking. I was hoping to find, in legal text, ἐκτιτρώσκω, and in medical text, ἀμβλίσκω. This is not what I could find, but I could definitely find that this kind of morally connotated language is in the church fathers, so in patristics and in liturgical text and in legal text. I couldn't find it at all for now in medical sources, which is already, I think, interesting data per se. But I couldn't find it. I couldn't find a specific moment. Also because, and then with this I will just say the last thing, this moralizing language, it's something that you would in any case already find in Latin, for example, in Latin authors as Seneca or I'm sorry, I'm missing the Juvenal, or in Juvenal. So when they talk about abortion, not obviously in Christian terms, they would still talk about it in moral terms, even though we are pre-Christianity. Why? Because the woman is in any case depriving her husband and the state, so the Roman Respublica, from kids, from heirs. So that moralizing stance, although not Christian, would already be there. So I I don't think I will find a moment where I see a neat division between non-moralizing way of talking about it and moralizing way of talking about it. I think it's mostly genre. Medical more neutral and non-medical less neutral. But let's see, it might change. It might change in a few years.
Thank you. This is fascinating. Looking forward to whatever you're going to produce as you go along with the project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, and perhaps also final question by Dan.
Thank you very much. A fascinating project and paper. Thank you. For this, I'm curious about the sources. So you cast a wide net, the TLG searches to everything. So you, as you showed us today, there are a variety of genres, literary genres where you can find your things. Did you observe already by doing these swipes where the data agglomerates around what genre? Do you get suddenly more sources on legal stuff or on patristic stuff and Byzantine authors or else? And yeah, I agree that manuscript, that genre should be liturgical for the example that you gave us, because it's a broad term and there is something to that connection, even if it's not a reading on that day in that Sunday, and there is something liturgical to it. So yeah, where does the data agglomerate? I'm curious in terms of genres.
Yeah, thank you. I will show you again very quickly. I will show you what I'm trying to do so that you have an idea. And so basically what I'm trying to do is, as you say, thank you for the expression, drawing a wide nest. So basically I'm trying to work with words, as you can see, and then I just try and write information, basic information when it comes to the genre here. As you can see, it is already quite big, but I still have a lot of work to do. So for example, these are words that are still missing. And I have the feeling that, as you can see here, legal texts are very, very present. Medicine as well, for example. And but definitely legal has the lion's share, especially when it comes to Middle Byzantium, let's say. Why is that? It is because, as we know, there was a decrease in literary production after the 7th century, whereas the legal codes are where I kind of continue to see a certain kind of stability. And I'm thinking also about canon law, of course, so not only civil law, but also canon law. It is, as they would say in French, a big mess, because, as you know, Byzantine law, both civil and canon, is not easy to tackle and to deal with. But there's no, for now, there are almost no code, like legal code, where there wouldn't be either like a new code or a re-elaboration of something previous, like, for example, Macedonian codes, where you wouldn't have at least 1 or 2 paragraphs on abortion. And this is telling already, I think. Then, and this is something again for the future, maybe, if I were to take into later Byzantium, I think that there we would have a massive shift into Xenonica. So Byzantine medical manuals, because there you would have a lot of recipes for abortion. Luckily, I am keeping them out for now. But I think that, for example, in later Byzantium, Eucologia and Xenonica would be the places to take the lion's share.
Very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we should have the second final question. So I give the floor to Flora.
Okay, thank you very much. I was very thrilled by the whole expose, Larisa. I have a question. In fact, in the margin, I understand that my question is about fertility control in the sense before conception. This is not the scope of your semantic framework that you're studying, but still I can imagine that especially in legal texts and canon law, you would also find indications of things that happen before conception. And I think especially if you look at the very inventive and creative methods of termination by women, they would also have something else before conception besides abstination, and especially in the context of adultery in legal texts and what the Church Father would call fornication. Have you seen that there is a correlation between the lexical terms in about termination and what is practiced before conception, or it's just in the margin?
So you don't mean contraceptives or way not to conceive?
Yes, contraceptives. Yeah.
Okay.
I can imagine that things will be mentioned also in legal texts. Is there a difference, or?
Yeah, thank you. Not so, I would say, like for what I've seen up to now, not so much in legal texts, but once again in patristics or liturgical or medical sources. So in medical sources, every time, so for example, in Issues of Amida or in Metrodora's, the famous treatise of Metrodora, when you have mention of abortifacients, so abortive recipes, you always have also recipes not to conceive. So the two things almost always come in tandem. So
and you would have a serious moral judgment about that as well, I suppose.
In some cases, yes. In some cases, yes. Not in medical sources. Which is fascinating, but in the others, yes. So, for example, in the liturgical text I showed you, thanks to Andy's question, there, to me, at this stage, it's very difficult to understand what is abortion and what is contraception, because in any case, contraception in that text is framed as a monthly murder, because the fact that you're taking something monthly, is already murder.
Yeah.
It's not really important if you conceived or not. It is in any case murder. And what is also interesting is that, for example, about like the preconception thing, you would have in Issues of Amida recipes for contraception, where he would say, the first thing you should do after the intercourse is to do all the things that you should not do if you want to conceive. So, for example, start and jump around, start lifting weights, start sneezing. So the idea of preventing conception, obviously with recipes, herbs, but even before that with kind of mechanical means in order to expel sperma, for example. So, yeah, but they all almost come in tandem. Yeah, abortion.
Okay.
Conception.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
And on this note, I'd like to thank our participants for joining in for this paper, and also for a fascinating paper to our speaker.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you everyone for the questions. And if you have other questions, I'm really happy to be reached through email or in Vienna.